After completing a 9-month tour as a Marine, I came home. The first thing that greeted me upon my return was a dinner invitation. The family reunion dinner was like a perfectly staged play. My mother's smile, my father's questions, all part of a script. Their real weapon wasn't the cutlery, but the glass of juice on the table, prepared to take me down. Their plan was almost flawless, but it was built on two fatal mistakes. The first mistake, they thought I didn't know. The bigger mistake, they forgot who I was and what I had been through. When the stage is your home and the actors are your family, how do you flip the script? I am Landon Donovan, a Marine lieutenant. I had just returned to Crestfall after more than 9 months without contact with anyone in the family. They called me home for dinner. No special occasion, no birthday, no holiday, just dinner. The meal took place in the familiar dining room at 112 Aberdeen Lane. The room was still neat, clean, and suffocatingly silent. The smell of meatloaf filled the air, a scent that was both cozy and gave me the feeling of being trapped in a place I shouldn't stay for long. On the table were meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and boiled green beans. My mother Meredith still cooked those same 3 dishes every time I came home. She didn't ask if I still liked them. She didn't need to know, nor did she want to. My father, Warren, was rambling on about politics. His right hand held a knife, his left pointed at the television. An old habit. They're all puppets. Not a decent one among them, he said. His voice half sarcastic, half smug. He spoke as if he were training a new recruit. As if I were still the son who didn't know how to fight back. My mother kept piling food onto my plate, her smile held at a perfect angle. A smile she had used for the past 20 years to hide everything. Sienna, my sister, sat on the other side of the table, her eyes glued to her phone, dark red fingernails. A Bluetooth earbud hung loosely in one ear. She didn't bother to look up when my father spoke. Only when my mother mentioned her name would she glance up, mumble a few words, and then look back down, as if living in another world. I cut a piece of meat, chewed slowly, swallowed. It was blander than I remembered. But just as I suspected, this meal wasn't for talking. It was more like a ritual, something they thought would bring the family back together. I glanced around the table once more. My father was still talking. My mother was still serving food. My sister was still scrolling on her phone. No one asked me about my time in the military. No one asked why I had returned so suddenly. No one asked where I had been for the past year. And that was fine. I didn't need questions. I needed time. I needed to take a good look at this stage where I was once the main character, and then pushed to the sidelines. I sat still, watching, waiting. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but my gut did. And it had never been wrong. As I raised the glass of juice to my lips, I felt my phone vibrate softly in my pants pocket. Once. Very lightly. But enough for me to feel it. I put the glass down, my finger gently touching the edge of the table. No one noticed. My father was absorbed in his speech. I could still hear the clinking of my mother's cutlery. Sienna just let out a little laugh at something on her phone. I slowly lowered my hand. A lazy movement, as if I were just changing my sitting position. I pulled the phone out from under the table, covering it with a napkin. My thumb swiped lightly, unlocking the screen. There was only one new message, from an unknown number. No name, no history. The words appeared on a dark background. Cold and decisive. Get up and leave now. Don't say anything to your parents. In half a second, my brain ran through a series of hypotheses. Spam? Wrong number? Code? A warning? My heart beat to a different rhythm. Not fast, but deep. I looked up. The room was the same as before. My father was cutting another piece of meat. My mother scooped more sauce onto my mashed potatoes, an automatic gesture of care, without looking to see if I had eaten yet. My sister turned her phone sideways to watch a video. I read the message a second time. A third time. There was no mistake. My face was expressionless. My breathing was steady. This was discipline, the thing the Marines had taught me. When a situation becomes chaotic, the mind must be at its sharpest. The play had a new line, and I was the only one who heard it. No one was looking at me. I placed my knife and fork down on the plate, stood up, and pushed the chair back. "Excuse me, I'm going to the restroom." My voice was even, without a ripple, as if I genuinely just needed to use the restroom. My father gave a slight nod, not even looking up. My mother's smile remained fixed on her face. I walked out of the dining room, turned left down the hall, and went upstairs to the second floor. The guest bathroom door closed behind me, cutting off all sound. Now, it was just me and the question on the phone screen. The bathroom was cold and silent. I turned the faucet on a little, creating just enough white noise. Then, I locked the door. The dry click echoed. A sound of confirmation. Safe. I leaned my back against the door, my eyes fixed on the phone screen. My thumb swiped across the screen, pressing the callback button. Without hesitation, if this was a trap, the best way was to walk right into it. If this was a warning, I needed information, immediately. The phone rang only once. "Landon? Thank God you called back," a familiar voice said, urgent and a little panicked. "Jared Vance, Sienna's boyfriend." His voice sounded like it was about to crack with fear, but I wasn't fooled, it was too theatrical. "Talk," I said, my voice low and even. There was no time for greetings. "You have to get out of there now. They put something in your cranberry juice," Jared blurted out, frantic as if racing against time. "They're going to knock you out. Then use your fingerprint to unlock your phone and transfer money." I swear, this wasn't my idea. I told Sienna she was crazy. I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. "I don't want to be involved in this." I was silent. My ears heard every word. My eyes looked down at the tiled floor, but my brain was analyzing something else. The rhythm of his voice, the pauses, the deliberate emphasis on the phrase, "I can't accept this." He was trying too hard to seem like a good person. "What was it?" I asked, cutting him off. "What?" Jared seemed confused. "I asked what they put in the juice," I repeated, emphasizing each word. I don't know. I only overheard bits and pieces. "Please, Landon, stop asking. Get out of there now." He was lying, or hiding part of the truth. He knew more than he was saying, but the core information was real. The juice, the drug, the fingerprint, the money. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to form a clear picture. "All right," I said, and hung up. No thank yous, no promises. I had heard enough. The party downstairs didn't just have 3 actors, it had a director behind the scenes. And now, he had just spoken. I put the phone back in my pocket, but didn't leave the bathroom immediately. I looked at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. A man in uniform, with an expressionless face, but the eyes didn't lie. They were analyzing, connecting the dots. Jared's words had opened a door to my memories, a door I had tried to keep shut for many years. I remembered being a kid, watching Sienna cry because she wanted an expensive doll in a store, and then my parents' eyes turned to me. Not a single word was spoken, but the pressure was there. "You have to take care of your sister." And I had to smash my piggy bank. I remember the day I got my first paycheck from my programming job. Before I enlisted, my mother didn't ask how I would save it. She asked if I could help Sienna pay for her extra classes. And then there was the money for a laptop, for trips with her friends. My income was never really mine. It was the family's contingency fund. And I remember vividly the night at a relative's wedding party. I only had 2 sips of wine and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was on the sofa, my head throbbing. The whole family laughed it off, saying I was a lightweight. But it wasn't a joke. It was an experiment. They had seen my weakness. They didn't just remember it. They had planned to reuse it in a more perfect way. But all of that wasn't the end. The financial draining, though persistent and toxic, wasn't the final line. The end was the call I received 3 weeks ago. Not from my family, but from the Marine Corps Security Department. A strange voice, polite but cold as steel, asked me to explain a $25,000 loan taken out in Lieutenant Landon Donovan's name, made 3 months earlier at a questionable credit company, a loan I knew nothing about. In a moment of silent shock, my brain connected all the dots. The routine security investigation, a financial red flag, the risk of losing my high-level security clearance, the end of my career, the end of everything I had poured my sweat and blood into building. They hadn't just taken my money. They had stolen my identity, mortgaged a soldier's honor for their selfishness. They had put my career on the chopping block. That was the unforgivable betrayal. So, when Sienna called a few days later, sobbing on the phone about a $12,000 gambling debt, for the first time in my life I said no decisively. And then came the dinner invitation. Now, I understood. Everything was connected. This dinner wasn't a reconciliation. It was an operation. A meticulously planned scheme. They didn't just want my money. They wanted to take it their way. According to a script, they believed I would continue to play my old role in, and tonight was opening night. I turned on the faucet, washing my hands. The water was icy cold, stinging my skin, helping my mind clear. The anger didn't erupt into a fire. It condensed thickly into a block of ice in my chest. They had made a mistake. They thought I was still the obedient son from back then. They didn't know that in the places I had been, a small miscalculation could cost a life. And they had just taken a wrong step. That cold anger was exactly what I needed. It turned chaos into focus. In the Marines, we don't panic. We plan. And right there in that cold bathroom, an operation began to form in my head. Objective, exposure, method. Use their own plan against them. My hands didn't shake. Every movement was precise, purposeful. I took out my phone. First, the recording app. I found it in the Utilities folder, turned it on, and selected background recording mode. The phone screen returned to normal. Now, it was my eyes and ears, even when my eyes were closed. Second, the banking app. I opened it, went to Settings and Security, found the two-factor authentication, 2FA, section. I activated it, linking it to another authentication app on the phone, a firewall that a fingerprint couldn't bypass. They could open the door, but they wouldn't get into the treasure vault. Done. The whole process took less than a minute. I turned off the faucet, unlocked the door. The silence of the house flowed back in. I took a deep breath, adjusting my expression. The coldness vanished, replaced by a look of vague fatigue. I returned to the dining room. Everything was the same. My father was still talking. My mother was still smiling. Sienna was still staring at her screen. I sat down. "Must be tired from the long trip," I said, my voice tinged with weariness. A spark of light flashed in my mother's eyes, one that only I could see. She had taken the bait. I picked up the glass of juice. The dark red liquid shimmered in the glass. I looked at it, then up at them. My hand shook slightly on purpose. I took a small sip, just enough to wet my lips. It was cloyingly sweet, with a slightly artificial taste. I put the glass down. A few minutes passed. I began to act. I rubbed my eyes, shook my head slightly. "I feel a bit dizzy," I said, my voice groggy. Then I leaned back into the nearby sofa, my eyes slowly closing. The play had begun. And now, I was no longer the audience. I was the trap. Closing my eyes didn't mean I stopped observing. When my sight was temporarily turned off, All my other senses became sharper. I focused on my hearing, filtering out unnecessary noises, leaving only the important sounds. The silence lasted about 10 seconds. They must have been waiting. Then I heard my mother's whisper. Her voice was chillingly calm, with none of the false warmth left. "Is he asleep yet? Sienna, check his pulse on his wrist. Make sure he's deep under. Just calmly follow the steps I showed you." In that moment, another memory flooded my mind. My mother used to be a nurse. 10 years in the pre-op ward. She knew about dosages. She knew about the effects of drugs. This wasn't a spontaneous act. This was a calculated procedure. That realization made my chest tighten, but my face remained still. "He's under," Sienna's voice replied, with a hint of gloating. "Looks just like that time at the wedding." Light footsteps moved closer. I could feel the warmth of someone bending down near me. Then a tiny clinking sound as my phone was lifted from my pants pocket. Silence. They were doing something with it. I could picture the scene. My father standing guard, my mother observing, and Sienna, the one carrying it out. Then I felt my hand being lifted. Very gently. My sister's fingers were holding my hand. My thumb was pressed against the sensor. A light, deliberate pressure. 1 second. 2 seconds. "I'm in," Sienna whispered, full of excitement. "Quick, go to the banking app." I heard swiping and tapping on the screen. The sound of greed. Account number. Here it is. Transfer. 12,000. Silence. A silence that lasted longer than usual. "Damn it," Sienna hissed, her voice full of disappointment and panic. "It's asking for some kind of authentication code." He changed the settings. "What?" My father's voice growled, all his smugness gone. "That's ridiculous. Let me see. There must be a way to get past it. I don't know. I can't get in." Their whole wicked play, from confidence to disappointment, was being recorded on the device right there in their hands. They had lost. They just didn't know it yet. The silence after Sienna's curse was heavy as lead. I could feel the panic seeping into the air. Their perfect plan had just hit a wall they hadn't anticipated. "Try again." My father's voice was slightly strained. "It's no use. It's locked," Sienna replied, her voice irritated. "All right, that's enough," my mother said, her voice still holding a terrifying calmness. "Put the phone back where you found it. Hurry." I heard a clinking sound as the phone was stuffed back into my pants pocket. A few footsteps backed away. The atmosphere returned to a state of waiting. I gave them another minute, a minute for them to settle down, to believe I was still sound asleep, and for their disappointment to subside. Then I began to move. Slowly, I stirred slightly, making a little sound in my throat. I slowly opened my eyes, squinting as if blinded by the light. I sat up, raising my hand to rub my temples. Did I fall asleep?" I said, my voice sleepy. I guess I was really exhausted. All three of them looked at me. Their eyes were probing, a little anxious, and held an undisguised disappointment. "Are you okay?" my mother asked, the fake smile reappearing on her face. "I'm fine," I replied, then looked at my watch. "Oh no, it's late. I have to go home. I have something to do early tomorrow." I stood up, picked up my phone as if nothing had happened, as if it hadn't just been both a tool and a witness to a crime. At the door, my mother hugged me, a tighter hug than usual. Then my father, a stiff pat on the shoulder. Finally, Sienna, who just lightly touched my arm, her eyes avoiding mine. I felt the cold falsehood in every touch. This was the last time. I didn't go home. I got into my car, slamming the door shut. The silence in the car almost made me deaf, a completely different silence from the stifling atmosphere in that house. My hands gripped the steering wheel, but the key was still in the ignition, not turned. For a moment, This wasn't the car that would take me to the police station. It was the car my father had taught me my first driving lessons in. I suddenly remembered his voice then, awkwardly proud, and the image of my mother waving from the window. A beautiful memory, almost foreign. But then that image vanished, replaced by the truth of tonight. My mother's fake smile. My father's stiff pat on the shoulder. The disappointment and hatred in Sienna's eyes when the plan failed. And most of all, the voice cold as steel over the phone from the security officer, asking me about a loan that almost ruined everything I had built. They weren't a family. A family doesn't mortgage their child's honor. This wasn't revenge. This was surgery, cutting away the rotten part to save the rest. I took a deep breath, then exhaled. The block of ice in my chest seemed to solidify, firm. I turned the key. The engine roared to life, completely breaking the silence, and I drove straight to the Crestfall Police Department. My mind was no longer calm. It was sharp. I parked the car, walked inside, the air thick with the smell of old paper and cheap coffee. I met Officer Reyes, a middle-aged man with tired but sharp eyes. I sat across from him in a small interrogation room with light blue walls. I presented the events concisely, without emotion. Then I placed my phone on the table and played the recording. Officer Reyes listened in silence. His face slowly changed, from its usual weariness to astonishment, then hardened into professional seriousness. When the tape ended, he looked at me. I added, my voice steady. My mother is a retired nurse. I don't think it was just a sleeping pill. I request an analysis of the substance left in the glass. I had carefully brought the glass of juice with me. 2 days later, the Donovan family's world began to crumble. I didn't hear from them, but from Officer Reyes. He called me, his voice professional but not hiding his astonishment. Lieutenant Donovan, we have the preliminary analysis results, he said. The substance in the glass is midazolam, a short-acting anesthetic commonly used in medicine. It's not sold freely on the market. I see, I replied. The confirmation only made the block of ice in my chest harden further. Officer Reyes continued. We have issued subpoenas. Their lawyer just contacted us. I didn't ask anything else. Everything was going according to plan. I hung up and blocked all of them. Mom, Dad, Sienna, even the relatives who might call to reason with me. The play was over. But there was one number I didn't block. Jared Vance's number. And just as I had predicted, 3 days later, he called. This time his voice no longer had the fake panic. It was deeper, with a hint of resentment. Landon, he said without a greeting. Jared, I replied. They were summoned by the police. Her mom has been crying since yesterday. Sienna locked herself in her room. Is that so? I said, my voice expressionless. Listen, he said, his voice a little sharp. This has gone too far. It's just a family misunderstanding, you know. I was silent, letting him reveal himself. Sienna, she's devastated, he continued. She told me she'll do anything for you to drop the charges. She said she could compensate you. So that was it. He wasn't calling to reconcile. He was calling to be a middleman, to see if he could profit from this mess. Compensate me? I asked, my voice coldly sarcastic. With what? With the money you all planned to take from me? The other end of the line was silent for a second. I had called his bluff. Listen, Landon. His voice changed, becoming threatening. She dumped me. Right before that dinner. She thought she could get back with her richer ex-boyfriend. She thought she could use me and then throw me away. I helped her plan, and then she was going to cut me out. The truth finally came out. He wasn't a good person. He wasn't the director either. He was just a betrayed accomplice. A rat trying to escape a sinking ship. So you're calling to blackmail me? I asked directly. No, he quickly denied. I'm calling to help. Help us all. If Sienna gives me a hush money payment, I won't go to the police and confess that I was an accomplice. Her crime will be much lighter. Do you understand? I understood. I understood all too well. The rot wasn't just in my family. It had spread to the people around them. I'll give you a piece of advice, Jared, I said, my voice slow and clear. Find a good lawyer. You're going to need him. Then I hung up and blocked his number too. The last pawn had turned itself over, and I had just given Officer Reyes a key witness, or a fourth defendant. The next few weeks passed in silence. No annoying calls. No fake, tearful messages. Just brief, professional updates from Officer Reyes. My recording was undeniable evidence. The forensic report on the specialized anesthetic had extinguished all hope for my mother's defense, and Jared's testimony, in a desperate attempt to get a reduced sentence, had painted a complete picture of a meticulously planned and conspired plot. He had become the fourth defendant, just as I had predicted. They had no choice but to plead guilty to avoid a public trial and a harsher sentence. The outcome: each received a separate sentence, probation, community service, and a permanent restraining order against me. The house on Aberdeen Street was put up for sale to cover legal fees and debts I had never known about. The Donovan family's play had truly ended. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt an emptiness, as if a storm had just passed, leaving behind a chilling silence. Months later, I happened to see her. That day, I was in another part of Crestfall, stopping at a discount supermarket called Value Mart to buy a few odds and ends. As I was standing at the checkout, I saw an employee busily stocking shelves, familiar blonde hair, a petite figure. It was Sienna. She wore the supermarket's blue uniform, her hair in a simple ponytail. No more dark red nails, no more Bluetooth earbuds, just a pair of work gloves and a blank expression. When she turned around, our eyes met. Just for a second. In her eyes, I saw panic, then shame, then hatred. She quickly turned away, almost dropping the stack of cereal boxes in her hands. Her face bowed, staring at the floor as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. I said nothing. I paid for my items and walked out. As the automatic doors closed behind me, I took a deep breath. The air outside was fresh and a little chilly. I hadn't won. I had simply survived. I had performed a surgery to cut away a rotten part of my life. The scar would remain, but at least the rest had been saved. The peace I had wasn't joy. It was a purity, cold but necessary. And finally, I was truly free.